Hello and welcome to CrossCode Any Percent, a speedrun that has gone through so many changes because of how much has been discovered throughout the year this game has been released. Now, there's going to be a lot of file manipulation about a minute and a half into this run, so allow me to explain what's about to happen to my best ability. There is a menu glitch called blank save, which gives us a level 1 Leah file with all the elements unlocked, as well as some other functions. Now, having all the elements unlocked from the start of the game allows us to skip going to all of the temples where we're supposed to get the elements in the first place, and instead just go straight from the start of the game into the final dungeon. Now, what we can also do with blank save is also bring Shizuka out of the prologue and into the main game. But to do that, we need to have access to saves, which is only given to us after this shooting tutorial. And now we're about to get into some crazy stuff. I'm going to make 2 saves here, and I'm going to store 4 save prompts by pressing confirm and cancel at the same time, and I'm going to bring these save prompts into new game, back into the prologue, and start the file manipulation. The first save is just going to be making a save in this room here. The second save is going to be the blank save, which is saving right when a file is being loaded from the main menu. Then I'm going to save when I move into a Shizuka cutscene, and that gives us a blank save Shizuka, and we're going to back in time Shizuka into the ship by glitching a load prompt, and then going back into the Shizuka file, and then save while the transition from the first game file into the second game file is being made, and that pretty much changes our location from one save file to be the second save file's location. So there's a whole lot going on here. I'll try to explain this. This speedrun is really wild, okay? So there are 2 basic movements in the speedrun. One of them is called infinite dashing, which is if you guard between dashing, it refreshes the amount of dashes you can do at once. The second basic movement that we do is called long jumps, which is meleeing in mid-air, or aiming, or guarding, then dashing after that to extend our jump even farther. Now, there were some other menu glitches that we just went past here. Those were called save warps. If you glitch a save prompt and save during a room transition, it loads the next room, but does not properly update our exit location, and that can pretty much put us at the exits right when we're going through the entrance of the room. Now here, I stored a save prompt while going through the Carla cutscene for the elevator, and saved right after the cutscene ended, and that allows us to reload the save and allow us to do whatever with the elevator, skipping the introduction to where you are and what Crossworld is, and just start the tutorial for Jet here. Now, the reason why we have Shizuka is because she has very overtuned stats. She also gains access to some arts right away, and one of those is Spin Dance, and that does a lot of damage, as you can see. You're about to see how much damage it is if you can't really tell yet with this boss. We're gonna manipulate him to do a slam, and then walk him into the corner here, and it should be enough time to have been passed to put him into the vulnerable attack. And we're gonna do the Spin Dance, which can only be performed while in heat mode. An instant one shot. Now, here's the escape sequence. We're not gonna do all this running. Instead, we're gonna do a back in time to change our location from this save files into Cargill Hold 1, where we brought Shizuka into the main game. Back in time only changes your location, nothing else. So, that's it for the beginning here. This next section is mainly just going to be basic movement, bunch of infinite dashing and long jumps. The room after this is going to be save warp, just to specifically point out an example of how we save warp. This room's exit is has the same label as the next room's exit. So if we save warp through the transition, we get put right at the teleporter here. We're gonna do a couple long jumps here, hit the switch twice, and dash past the block here to make this cycle. And I'm going to do a very tight trick here, which is making this cycle right away. You could do a save warp there instead, just to make your life a little bit easier, as well as a save warp through this screen. And I'm going to pull out the mouse for this shot here, which is the shot for the bottom half of the dungeon to be skipped. And I'm going to do what's called a save warp stack. I took the exit location from where I just came from to hit these switches, and I'm going to make it so that the game puts me at the same exit label as this room. The one before this room does not work because the exit for the teleporter is called West, and there is no corresponding exit label for the previous equipment room tutorial to have anything called West. Alright. We're going to put a save right after this boss, because this room, when you get the ability to have circuits activated, it gets rid of all your other elements. As you can see, we only have neutral left, and we need the other elements in order to complete the game. So we're going to back in time that save file that we just made, and we're going to put it into this location right here, using a couple stored load prompts. One of them to load the boss room, and the next to load the balcony. Alright, now we're out of the beginning of the game. Now, it may not seem like it, but you can pretty much go to every area of the game. How are we going to do that? Well, first off, we're going to grab some food here, just to sell. Yeah, just to sell. And we're going to do a save warp through the loading transition of this teleporter and put us to the entrance for Rhombus Square. Now, the exit labels do not correspond here, but what the game does is, if the exit labels do not match what the room has, it puts us at a default location, which is the first entity in the map JSON file. Now, what I'm doing here is a vendor glitch called infinite money. What I'm doing here is bringing the sell menu out into the buy sell menu, increasing how much I can sell, because the game is tricked into buying at that point, and that pushes us past the limits of how many items we own in our inventory and just allows us to sell an infinite amount of it. Now, we're going to grab about 650 credits, 650,000 credits. And what we're going to do with those credits is buy a bunch of backer food items. 21 of those backer food items is going to be spicy Beto types. Those are important because they increase our damage output for our melees by 50%. And the rest of our money we're going to buy laser gear. Yes, laser gear, even though Shizuka is very overtuned with her stats, doing more damage on top of that is plenty more nice. Alright, I'm going to make a save in this location and exit out of the game. This clears the cache of how the game loads areas. So what I'm going to perform here is called a character swap. It's pretty much performs exactly like a back in time, but if you save during the loading icon of when a file is being loaded, it saves at a different stage of file loading, and that allows us to pretty much just swap out characters between Shizuka and Leah. Now the reason why we switch back to Leah is because she has access to all the arts. We need dash arts to get past this barrier. I fail it here, but the only arts that Shizuka has access to is Spin Dance, apparently Calamity Trigger, and Ragnarok. So if we do a dash art past this barrier, which leads to Caves In and Sapphire Ridge, and start a tutorial, it cancels out the access denied and puts us past the barrier and into Sapphire Ridge. We're going to store this landmark and bring it back over to the save, which has Shizuka. And yeah, we went from the start of the game to Rhombus Square and Sapphire Ridge. Now, you may be wondering what I'm doing here. I'm going to be grinding a bit just to set up a specific build for final boss strats. I'm going to get to level 11 before entering the final dungeon, and I'll explain what the build is going to be when we get to the final boss. But for now, I'm going to explain a different feature in CrossCode. Now, CrossCode has been in early access for a good while. Now, a feature that the devs put in is a save fix, which pretty much allows people to update their save from older versions of the game into newer versions of where the game has implemented new story points or story chapters. There are several save fix locations which bring us to specific story chapters or story points. The first one is Bergen Trail, which is after the fight with Apollo. The second one is at Bakukum, which is after you accept the Maroon Tree Defender quests. And the third one is in the excluded mountaintop in Bergen Trail, which is where you're supposed to be taken to after Para Islands in Autumn's Fall. Now, taking the save fix, going to excluded mountaintop, allows us to skip taking the walk through Rookie Harbor, Autumn's Rise, Bergen Trail, Bergen Village, all of Temple Mines, Ruin Valley, Bakukum, Rune Tree, all of Faro Temple, Autumn's Fall, all of the Frobit quests, as well as the Para Island raid. So yeah, we're going from the start of the game to Rhombus Square to the endgame location of Sapphire Ridge, and we're going to go back to a midpoint of the game to Vermillion Wastelands. You will see what's about to happen. Apparently, well, if you've played the game before, you would know that Vermillion Wasteland is, as well as being the midpoint of the game, it also is the end point of the game, where it's the same location for the final dungeon. I'll explain how that's going to go down after I kill this beetle and take the save fix. I'm going to say no to the Bergen Trail fix, Ruin Tree fix, and take the one to Excluded Mountaintop for the capture sequence. I'm going to do some circuits here to boost my damage output as well. Alright, for this capture sequence, for this fight, you don't actually need to do the fight. You just need to put your HP down to 0 to start the final sequence. The impossible challenge where you're supposed to dodge his dash attacks. But yeah, we're just gonna jump off here. Now, if you switch from a circuit, from an element that has HP nodes back to neutral, it skips having dash off one more time. What is that little neat time saver? And we're going to embrace this hit. Alright. Now we're in Vermillion Wastelands. Now I told you that this is the same location for the final endpoint of the game, right? Well, that's about to be taken advantage of real quick here. So even though we're supposed to do quests in Vermillion Wastelands, we're going to skip all of that by storing this exit label for Scarlet River, or Scarlet Lake, I believe it's called. And we're going to bring it to the dormitories location. And this will put us past the guards that are supposed to be blocking the entrance to Vermillion Tower. And so we're just going to take a stroll right in. Alright. Now, if you enter Vermillion Tower for the first time, it sets the flag for the final dungeon to be active. So if we back in time out of the dungeon and walk back in, we're in the final part of the game. Alright. Thanks to our level gain, Shizuka, our equipments, as well as our spicy beetle types, these enemies are quite a pushover. These viruses, the masterminds, when they spawn in, their shields aren't active right away, so you can stun lock them right when they spawn in. Now, I'm going to do another character swap on this floor here, closing out the game to clear out the game cache. And we're going to bring Leah into this part. Now, the reason for that is because, of course, Leah has more... Well, not really, of course, but she has access to more arts than Shizuka does. So, we're not going to be using a dash art per se, but we're going to be using Sphere Saw. How? Well, apparently you can stand on the outside of fences. They're misaligned with the floor on the grounds, and you can stand on them. And you're just enough far forward to reach these switches with Sphere Saw. And that allows you to skip going all the way around in these floors here. And I'm going to character swap back to Shizuka, mainly because Leah is not as buff as she is. And being able to kill faster is plenty good. Plenty good. Now, I'm not going to be doing the same thing on the next floor, mainly because it doesn't save time. It saves time on the first floor because even if you could save warp around the rooms, around going to the turrets, and get to the switches on the other side through the turret rooms, the heat turret room going to the switch is not unlocked. You have to defeat the heat turret in order to unlock that door. So having Shizuka be swapped to Leah for Sphere Saw is plenty worth it. But for these, not switching back to Leah does not save any time at all because we can just go through the turret rooms without having to defeat them. The default location for the elevator sends us back to the bottom entrance for that switch. And we're storing the exit for the shock turret to allow us to get to the exits of these rooms here. And grab us the switch for the wave turret. Alright, after these 4 shredders are destroyed, an enemy called an RNG is going to spawn, and when it spawns in, you can stun lock it to death. But I somehow drop it. If they're at below half health after they come out of the shielded phase, they flash white for an escape roll. If you just wait, you'll run out its timer for its escape roll and can just smack it. Now I ate a Pango Pop here because it increases our balance by quite a lot, and we're going to be shooting this turret for a good amount of time. We're going to be spawning 2 of these elemental shields. One of them is, of course, to get to the next turret, and the next one is to allow us to destroy the heat turret. Normally you're supposed to go through this room for this fight clockwise twice, but by doing this, we can just go through this room once clockwise. Because once you destroy a turret, the elemental shields it spawns will keep on spawning forever, so you can just keep on using it over and over. Now, I've been mailing these elemental shields because I've gotten a node on neutral called Assault. It does apply to other elements by 50% of what neutral has in their nodes. So the Assault applies while you're in other elements as well. Alright. Now on to the final test. Hasn't been ways to skip this part, unfortunately. I have tried ways to speed this whole thing up, but it didn't work out. So we're going through this whole process the intended way, unfortunately. This does provide a calm before the storm, because the final boss strats are pretty tight. Pretty strict. I'll explain to you the builds coming up, but we still got that enemy gauntlet for the big elevator fight coming up here. I'll allow that to go on before we start doing the circuits, and I'll explain to you why we get what we get in our skill trees. But for now, enjoy. Alright, I have said that the Assault and Neutral still applies while you're in other elements, but for the skill tree that you swap from for the Assault gives you Iron Stance, 4% of it, and that means if you take damage that is below 4% of your max HP, you do not flinch at all. Now that applies to other elements by 50%, so you'll only have 2% Iron Stance if you're in other modes than neutral. But I did get some extra Iron Stance in Cold, mainly because it gave me more attack notes. So the reason why Iron Stance is important is because by eating this Dr. Pepper increases our defense level just enough to the point where we don't stagger it at all from this fight. Other than allowing us to break this guy's barrier very fast, it also allows us to phase skip him while he's doing these stomps. Now, the part of the platform that he breaks off, he chooses one that he's closest to after his second stomp. So just stick close to that part and you'll be able to continue hitting him as much as possible. Now, I hit him a couple times of neutral there, not just to decrease my overload or increase my SP, but it also set up his health just enough to where if I get this elemental shield and hit him, it doesn't require me to break his elemental shield after that point, and just instead go right back to these stomps to phase skip him. I just barely get this phase skip, as well as this next one. Alright. For the first 3 phases of this the creator fight for this boss name. They're going to be done normally, but for the power-up phases for when he increases his health pool, there's going to be ways to skip that. But it's going to be a little bit wild before we get to that point, so let's just chill for now. Spin Dance does a lot of break. Very, very useful for getting these phases down as fast as possible. Not just that it does a lot of damage, but quite a lot of break. Alright. We're up to the power-up phase where he has increased his health pool by a whole lot. And we gotta break these orbs in order to increase our attack multiplier to catch up to normal damage, at least relatively. Now, we're going to skip breaking these orbs on later phases. Normally, you do have to keep on collecting more of these orbs once you deplete his health and move on to the next portion of his HP. But if you interrupt his power-up animation before he starts increasing his HP numbers by breaking his chunk, actually, you can skip having to do all that and just continue bringing his health down more and more. So here I'm going to put down his health pool just enough. I'm using the damage number on the left here. So the reference I use for that is a high 41 or a low 42. The number I'm getting from that is when I'm beating his face in with melees. I'm taking a look at the far left two numbers. Now, I'm going to eat a Spicy Beetle type here and melee his chunk. Now, his health needs to be depleted before his chunk breaks, and then while he's powering up, I break his chunk, and that skips having to do any other orb shenanigans with Sergei hacks. And we can keep on repeating this process over and over, straight to death. Now the health number I put him to was a high 42 or a low 43. What I'm doing to control my damage a bit to get to those numbers consistently is by switching to his element that he switched to and shooting him, as that does quite a lot less damage and allows you to set up that damage number quite well. So for here, he's on wave. Before I get up to high 42 or low 43, I switch to wave and shoot him a bit, just to set up that damage number. This can get really scary in certain runs, because if you break his chunk while his number is being increased, it softwalks your game. Mainly because it does not spawn any orbs for you to increase your attack multiplier on. You are just stuck at that point. So having his health and his break meter are in a very precarious balance. And for here, I noticed that I did set the proper damage number, but I noticed that his health bar is way too low. So what I'm trying to do is shoot his trunk with shock, and that does break, and as well as lower damage because he is in shock mode as well. Once he gets to the vulnerable part, I will be nailing him with shock, so I can increase that break meter, as well as not deplete his health as fast, so I can get this break perfectly. And this is time. I was really nervous at that point where I needed to break his trunk on the shock phase, as I was nailing him with shock as well. But thankfully backups work out extremely well as long as you stay calm under that pressure, since this was an extremely good run coming out of the designer fight. But yeah, the experience is over. This category is completely insane. I'd like to give a shout out to everyone that has helped, especially Blue Cheetah, who found Blink Save in the first place, which really cut down the time in this category by a whole bunch, because we did have to go to the temples before that point. And as well as to Sloa, X-Dragon, Ghoul, and Urenstein as well. If you are looking to speedrun this game, this run was done on version 1.0.2-2 because some strats were patched out. The final boss strat for the crater has been patched out. And if you want to look at some resources, we have plenty of resources available on speedrun.com for the CrossCode section. And if you want some more specific help, head on over to the Discord where you can find it on the speedrun.com section for CrossCode. It will be on the left sidebar. But yeah, initially when I was doing this run after the tutorial skip for Sapphire Ridge early was found, I initially was going to try and put this down to a sub 30. But I did not expect myself to get to a low 29, a very, very low 29. This was a pretty good run with very minimal mistakes. But yeah. If you would like a more game-intended like story path for the speedruns of this game, I suggest checking out the other categories, such as No Menu Glitches NMG. It used to be called No Major Glitches, but the ability to use tutorials to get to major cities early was pretty big, and so the name change was very needed. So much so that another new category is being made called No Major Skips. But yeah, I run pretty much most of the categories in this game. If you want to watch them live, come visit me on Symphonian46 on Twitch. The link will be in the description. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this run. This run was very, very adrenaline-inducing for me at the time. The payoff was very great. But as for now, thank you guys for watching. Hope to see you next time. Thank you, thank you. See ya.